Thank you for doing this.
Thanks for having me. It was fun last night, right?
We're getting ready for the Graham Bensinger, Howie Mandel interview.
I walk out with my handbag and my goofy, and I go, okay. And I look, it's 15 naked guys. There's no bigger success in my career than Deal or No Deal.
And she is partially responsible for
Totally
that.
responsible. Yeah. She's my best friend. In my darkest moments, we have had the most guttural, deepest, hardest laughs.
Ever suicidal?
I'd be lying if I said it didn't. It never crossed my mind.
What stands out to you most from that Hawaii trip?
It's paralyzing. It was the most unexpected, paralyzing moment I would imagine in anybody's life. The only thing I have is moments. Moments are my currency. And it's what you do with what comes at you that makes a difference.
So I wanted to start off by talking to you about pranks, actually.
Yeah?
That's, as I understand it, kind of a key part of your life over the years. But
Yeah.
How about the art prank that was played on you?
Yes, it was a gift for my 50th birthday. So my real good friends presented me with this kind of abstract art piece. And they told me that, and with a letter saying that the artist had won the Beverly Hills Art Show. And I'll be honest, I didn't love it, but I loved it because I thought that these are my good friends and family who know what I love, and I love art, and just the thought of them going out and spending what I thought was probably a fortune for the winner of this art show on something that they thought I would love. So it meant more to me than just whatever the face value of whatever I thought that art was. It's like if somebody sang me a song, I'm not gonna judge the song, even if I don't like the song, but if you're singing it for me and they came to sing this song or they wrote this song about me, I would love it even more, right? Just humanity. And I loved it, and I put it up in a nice place in our house.
Prominently displayed.
Prominently displayed in the living room. I put it in the best place you could put it if you wanted it, because it meant more to me than anything. If people walked by and said, "What's this?" and I go, "This is the first place winner of the Beverly Art Show, purchased by my best friends for my 50th birthday." And anyway, we moved, and my wife, I was taking the art, and she said she really didn't love it. Is there any way you can have it? You could put it in your office. You could put it in. So in the second house, we worked with a decorator, and that decorator made a room where I could put it, and also based on the colors in the painting, bought some furniture. So the whole thing. The room looked great with the art, and then at the house that I'm living in now. We built, and my wife said, "Is there any way that we can not have that piece of art? I don't want to build around that piece of art. Is there any way?" And I said, "You know what? I've enjoyed it for like 20 years or whatever, or almost 20 years. What I'm going to do is I'm going to donate it on behalf of me and our family to an orphanage." It is an orphanage. And they'll put it in their lobby, and it was donated by Howie Mandel and family, a piece of art, which sits prominently. And maybe I can get for donating this piece of art, I'm not gonna take a big amount, but maybe it's a good tax break too,
right.
you know, tax exempt. And I did that. And then, lo and behold, I think it's 65th birthday came around, might have been 67th. They presented me with a card, and in the card there was a Polaroid picture of them all sitting around drunk in one of their apartments, throwing paint on a canvas. And that paint was the painting. It wasn't a Beverly Hills, it was just a mess of 4 drunk guys. But to this day, there is an orphanage here in Los Angeles that has a framed piece of art donated by the Mandel family.
Do you think they know?
If they're fans of you.
How did Candid Camera shape your comedy?
It shaped my life, not my comedy. My life. Candid Camera and Alan Funt, my fondest and warmest and clearest memories of life as a child all kind of are surrounded by laughter. And even though, because I couldn't articulate that I was struggling with mental health and OCD, my mom tells stories about, if they would if 3 people would sit in the room with their legs crossed and one person crossing the other way, even as a baby crawling, I would stop and get upset. I wanted them to uncross their legs. So it was like nothing, if something wasn't, I don't know, I don't remember that, but so I'm told. But I know that I always struggled internally. I do also know that I had this amazing upbringing, and my parents, there was no question about how much love and support there was for me. And there was a lot of laughter in my house. And when there was laughter, it was in the other room, because the kids went to bed, and then they would be laughing. And it was like a magnet. I just knew that not only if I laughed, but if somebody else laughed, there's an endorphin. I just wanted to be around the light. And my dad would bring home comedy albums, of which I didn't understand anything because I was 2 or 3 years old. And I'd hear a man talking or a woman talking, and then the audience and my parents would laugh, or they'd be watching TV and The Tonight Show or Steve Allen or Jack Parr at the time, and a comedian would be on, and I'd hear, and he'd be talking and he'd say something and my parents would laugh, and I'd sit there, I have no idea what this is. If he's talking about his mother-in-law, I don't even know what a mother-in-law is, I'm 2 or 3 years old. On one particular memory that is so strong for me is Alan Funt's Candid Camera on a Sunday night, which is a prank show. I didn't know that. I didn't understand, and I couldn't articulate, but I was sitting there with my parents watching, and Alan Funt was about to do a prank. And he explained to us what he was going to do. And I was articulate enough to understand the prank. And he told me specifically that, he was going to pretend to be a boss. They hired these women to be receptionists. The receptionist would come in, he'd explain that he's going out for lunch. If the phone rings, you got to answer it, and you got to take a message. And you can't miss one message, because if you miss a message, you're not going to have this job. And that's very important to me for you to get every call. And then he explained to us at home that what the receptionists don't know is there is a cable attached to the leg of the desk, and when she goes to reach for the phone to answer the phone, somebody on the other side of the wall is going to pull this cable. The whole desk and the phone is going to slide across the room, and they won't know. Real easy to understand for even a kid, for a baby. I'm going to take this table and I'm going to pull this table. When he told us this, it was that anticipation. I remember turning back to my parents, and we were just laughing, going, oh my God, like, what's gonna happen? And it was that same feeling like a surprise party, they're coming up the driveway. And for the first time, I realized that me and my parents were on the exact same wavelength, anticipating this joyous, I didn't know how we were gonna react, but oh my God, he just brought us into the show. He told me what's going to happen, and I can't wait, and my parents can't wait, and we're just sitting there. And the first receptionist young lady comes in, and the phone rings. As she goes to reach it, the desk goes away, and there was a guttural, like it was just seeing her freak out, the laughter and that feeling. And I turned around, and my parents were like tearing and laughing, and we were all laughing together. And there was just this release of whatever laughter releases. I don't know if they're endorphins. I don't know what it is, but it's just like, it was just the most wonderful thing. And it was great. And I continually, throughout life, have tried to recapture that moment. And after that, I wasn't intelligent enough or advanced enough to realize that this is a TV show, number one, that I'm watching, with an audience, with the mission to make that audience laugh. Didn't understand that. What I did understand, or what I, as a child, 4 to 6 years old, that if you do something funny that scares somebody, that makes them feel awkward, you're gonna laugh and it's gonna feel really good.
Okay, on the awkward front, you wrote, the more awkward, annoying, or humiliating the situation is, the funnier.
For me, because laughter is, you can obtain laughter in many ways. You can tickle somebody and make them laugh. It's not the same thing. But if you get somebody, if you can control, in my mind, and I think, I'm not a psychologist, but I feel so out of control and not able to control where my mind is going, to dark places, my fears, my neurosis, that when I do something, not to be mean, but when I do something where I can control if I can pull that desk away and make you go, oh my God, what happened to me? It's making me laugh. And that's what I'm always trying to do. I'm always trying to regain that thing. Now, I never understood, now I do, but I never understood that I don't have an audience. Like, I never told my friends. I didn't have friends.
Wait, on the friend front, how about having your buddy cross-dress in the airport?
That's something that's equally as funny to remember, and I'm ashamed of myself.
Really?
For going that far, yes.
Why?
I don't want to upset anybody, and I don't want to ruin anybody's day, and I don't want to ruin anybody's moment. That's all we have is moments, and that's all we have is time, and I don't want you to have any bad time in your life because of something that I did. And that went too far. I didn't know where to stop. And he got really, really angry, really, really embarrassed. Really, it's a funny story. He's wearing a dress on a 5-hour flight because he thinks that's the only way he could go on tour with me. Because apparently the budget was so that they were going to get opening acts in every stop that I had, and then that's what we told him, and that the only way he could travel was as my wife or my significant other, because American Airlines or whatever airlines it was offering a twofer, and where I could buy a ticket and my wife would fly for free. Which made no sense because it was under his name, and it was kind of funny because I loved the squirming. So he'd be in a dress, and I would send the flight attendant over to his seat to ask for his tickets, and he was nervous that he was going to get caught. And I told the flight attendants what was happening. They couldn't believe that this guy was sitting in a dress, and they would say, well, Louise, his name is Lou Dinos, why is your name different than Mr. Mandel's, and you're traveling on his thing? And he just with sweat and a dress, he would just go, it's my maiden name. I kept my maiden name. And you'd hear him talking like that. And it makes you laugh, but he was suffering the whole flight. And then there's no pants. He's wearing a dress. He's in front of 300 people. It was too much, too far.
Impacted the friendship?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I mean, we're friends today, but I've apologized and continue to apologize many times. He's gotten in trouble because of some of the pranks. I sent a little boy to his house. It was Mark, who you met here, the Boy Meets World. His nephew was in town. He was 7 years old. I sent him to Lou's apartment sometime in the middle of the night with a little note saying, I'm your son. You don't know if I was some waitress you met who is no longer with us, and didn't know what to do. So on her deathbed, she sent him with a plane ticket and a note to Lou. And Lou called me and said, you're not going to believe it. I have a son. My son is here. I was in bed. He woke me up at 3 a.m. And I said, I don't believe you. Put the kid on, and they put the kid on, and I had instructions for the kid. I said, when you give the phone back, and I want you to scream, nobody loves me, nobody cares for me, and run out the door and down the hall of the apartment, and there's a car, Mark's waiting for you, your uncle's waiting for you down below. He gives the phone back to Lou, and Lou's, can you believe this? My life has changed forever, and this kid runs, you can hear in the background, nobody loves me, nobody cares for me, and he runs. And Lou drops the phone, and in his underpants, this is 3 in the morning, he's running, there's an 8-year-old little boy, and he's running through an apartment building going, I love you, I want to care for you. And they called the police. That's not good. It's not a good story.
You said, as a comic, I believe there's no such thing as too soon, and there's no such thing as too far. I don't believe there's a line.
There isn't, not in comedy. I don't believe there's a line. I am appalled at anybody who cancels, doxes, prevents anybody from practicing this art form. You don't have to like it. You can be offended by it. You could be appalled by it, but we shouldn't be censoring it and stopping it. You know, it's the beauty of comedy, and I've talked about this many times. You know, you know, even in regular life, when people aren't comedians, sometimes up until recently, maybe even now, you know, you might say something in an office workspace and somebody might get offended. You used to be able to say, I'm only joking. Oh, I thought you were serious. That kind of, if they believed that you were doing it in the context of a joke, then it was okay. You're not really, that's what you were trying to be funny. Maybe you missed the mark. Maybe you said something offensive. And that's not even a comedian. But in the world of stand-up comedy, think of it as it is an art form. Think of a painter. Is there something you shouldn't be allowed to paint? You don't have to like the painting. You don't have to like the Mapplethorpes of this world, you know, the nudity, the depictions or whatever, and you don't have to buy it, you don't have to hang it in your house, you don't have to, but what, you can't say you can't use the color green. You can't use it. I'll let you be a painter, but you can't use the color green. I'll let you be an orator, but you can't use these words. You can't talk about this time. You can't talk about this event. I understand people getting offended, but you know, the beauty, when I first went to a comedy club, my very first time, and that's when I got dared to go on, I never heard live people talking like I wasn't allowed to talk in the house, like you can't talk in the workplace. And so within the context of maybe things that were happening that to us as human beings that people don't talk about openly. What I was saying was, when I came out here, I watched Richard Pryor. He was the first comic that I was aware that was doing this. Richard Pryor every night putting together live on the Sunset Strip. And it's out of context now, but at that time, to talk about drug addiction, his near-death experiences, his upbringing, you know, he's raised in a brothel and things like that. I mean, I remember being at the Comedy Store, it was jaw-dropping, but it was so authentic and real, and you know, and you say he could do it because it's him, but it's just like you have to find the sense of, I have to find the sense of humor. There's humor in everything, and humor always comes from darkness and bad. If you watch a clown falling down and you laugh at that, you're laughing at somebody else's misfortune. That's what two guys walk into a bar, it's not a joke unless something horrible happens to one of them, or embarrassing or awkward. It always, you have to find, that's why tragedy and comedy are those two masks. They're very, very similar. So if something tragic happens, sometimes the panacea, for some people, for me and my friends and the people that I admire, is to make a joke.
And you said at some point in the past few years, the window's closing on the art form, which I think is really scary and really debilitating.
Yes.
Explain that.
Well, I think the pendulum is coming back, so that was a darker time. But I feel like my friends were losing their jobs and losing their income because of things they were saying. You know, I was really good friends with Gilbert Gottfried, who I loved. He was a really good human being. You know, he lost that whole Aflac campaign because he wrote something on Twitter about the tsunami, I think in Taiwan at the time. He tried to make a joke. Whether the joke's funny or not, he lost a good portion of his income. I'm not arguing whether it was a good joke. I'm not arguing whether it was a tasteful joke, but he is a comedian. So because he did a joke, he got punished. And when we start punishing people for talking or for doing or for practicing their art form, that's kind of scary, isn't it? Because I'll speak for myself, you know, this is who I am. You know, everything I've ever been punished for, expelled for, gotten in trouble for is what I seem to get paid for now. Nobody recognized this as an art form. You know, I bump into people now who said they were in my high school, I was the funniest guy there. They weren't my friends, they didn't like me. Nobody liked me, I was odd. But, you know, there's a saying, there's a time and a place. I guess school and in the late 60s and early 70s was not the time or the place.
Well, speaking of being odd, before you realized you, I think, wanted to be a professional comedian, you were just starting out in the professional world, your office in the bathroom stall.
I was in the carpet business. I thought it was really, I always thought, I'm fascinated, I've talked to you earlier about being fascinated, I'm curious. And I love to see people react. I want a reaction, not only a laugh, but that awkward reaction you spoke of. So I had business cards made up, you know, so it was kind of serious. I was in retail, I was in the carpet business. This is before I had my own place, but people would come in and they'd buy the carpet and I'd go, you know, okay, come into my office, I'm gonna write up the order. And I made my office the stall in the men's room. And, you know, it's really funny. I learned that, you know, people, it's kind of interesting. It's kind of a great social, I think I live in a social experiment. I'm always experimenting socially, to see where the boundary is, where the bar, will somebody speak up? It was kind of funny for me to sit down and write contracts on a toilet and with a guy and his whole family standing outside the stall. The guy's in the stall and they're signing. Sometimes they'd say nothing, not even react. To me, that's almost funnier than, it's definitely funnier than somebody going, you're a nut. You're doing something crazy funny. You want us to come into the bath? You're nuts. But, you know, these are moments that I enjoyed, you know, like in the carpet business. I would sometimes, just to see how they'd react. You know, the family's there, I'm in their house. It was a captive audience because I'd have to leave. They, in a store, they could walk out. I would lie down at the base of the couch and draw their floor plan on my body and my belly button, and I'd lie there, seriously, and you'd see that they were just uncomfortable while the shirtless guy is drawing their living room, dining room, and 3 bedrooms on their body. And then I'd have them point out, so you want the, where do you want you want the plush or the shag in this room here, or do you want that? And eventually, what I found funny is you'd see it, they'd go from uncomfortable to giving up and just saying, you know, it's comfortable, and then they're just going, see by the room off of your belly button there, that's where we want that's where we're gonna want the gold. The gold should go from your belly button up to your nipple, and then we want the other carpet, where are the stairs? By my other nipple. And it would become part of the norm, and I find that incredibly fascinating and funny and interesting and educational.
So you're working now on your own, running your own carpet business. Explain the impact of your decision to take out 52 half-page ads, 1 a week in the local newspaper.
because that's again, so that's my business acumen. That's what's, it was like a shop at home service, right? You'd see an ad and then we would come out with, me or the salesman would come out with samples and write up orders. So how did they know that there wasn't a showroom at offices? So I'd have to take out ads in the local papers and on the radio, and that is a huge overhead. It's a big expense to buy ads in newspapers. So you talk to the sales staff, and then you found out that if you guaranteed, you could have a half page or a quarter page every week, or like, I don't know if it was the Saturday Star, I can't remember exactly which paper it was, or I was buying in all three papers. I'd have an ad. If I guaranteed 52 weeks, then it was not just marginally, very much cheaper. But I had to guarantee, and huge amounts of money, thousands and thousands of dollars. So I would guarantee there would be an ad running for my carpet place every week in every paper. That's a huge overhead, whether I was making sales or not. So I bought in advance, and I bought in bulk, which could have been, was the end of one of the companies, but I just restarted again.
North American carpet sales.
North American carpet sales, which actually I ended up bankrupting, and then because I overspent, and started another one.
Spring of 1977, amateur night, Yuk Yuks in Toronto. Your friends are encouraging you to go up. Take it from there.
Well, it's just a quick response to Mark Breslin, who is the owner, and he was the MC of Yuk Yuks.
And asks you to stay after when you get up.
He made an announcement after I saw my first stand-up comedy show live. If anybody feels like they can do this, I'm trying to remember specifically if it was that night or come back Monday, but it was, if you think you can do this, we do an amateur hour where everybody gets to come up for like 3 minutes. So if anybody wants to do it, sign up and we'll put you up either Monday night at midnight or after this show at midnight, or I know it was April 19th, 1977 when I went up. And I'll tell you why I know that. But somebody at the table went, "You should go up." And I just went, "Okay, I'll do it." And not because I had any aspirations to be in show business, not because I had any, nor did I think I was funny or a stand-up comic or anything, just because somebody said, "You should go up." And I went, "Okay." I've said okay to everything, until Deal or No Deal. But that was probably one of the first times I put a block up. But I said okay. And if I had to analyze what I was doing, I said, okay, and it'll be fun. Maybe some people will show up and it would be funny for them at a comedy club. There's no reason in hell that somebody should be saying, "Ladies and gentlemen, Howie Mandel." So therein lies, if there is a joke, that's the joke. The joke is, Howie Mandel's coming out. He's not a comedian. He doesn't want to be a comedian. He's never done this before. He's not prepared. It's just funny. "I can't believe you did that." And that would be the joke. That would be the joke. That's as much thought as I put into it. So I remember being in the back hall and somebody goes, "Ladies and gentlemen, Howie Mandel." And I walk out and I, ta-da! And there's a big applause and I'm just looking. And when I walk out, if you've ever been on a stage, it's blinding. It's blinding. It's not like you can't see the room. People think you could see them. You can't see the room. So these lights are in my face, and all I could see is the foam on the microphone in front of me, and I'm standing there like this. And at that time, smoking was, in small places was not frowned upon, and especially in clubs. So it's billowing smoke in my face. So it's this haze, and within seconds, the applause stops and people sit and wait. And then I'm there and I didn't have a plan. I didn't have a plan. And I looked down, you could see the front row. And there's people smoking and looking up at you like, okay, funny boy. And the adrenaline, the embarrassment, the fear, the terror, just going, oh my God, like, I should have thought of something. And that's what I started. I started going, okay, all right, okay. And they started giggling at my adrenaline and fear, and they started giggling, and I didn't really I wasn't in tune enough. They all started laughing, and I went, what? No, tell me, what? Okay, well, here's something. You want to hear something? And I heard myself say, you want to hear something? You know, I'd make a noise, and I would do things like just like bad dad joke. I'd go. It's an inside joke, and I used to carried a bag that was in the shape of a hand. It was a handbag. It's like, oh, it's a handbag, and they laughed at that. And then I didn't know what. I was terrified. I put my hands in my pocket, and because I have OCD. And I'm afraid of germs, I was carrying always rubber gloves that I would buy at the drugstore, latex gloves. I pulled out one of the gloves, and they're just standing there, okay. And I don't know why, I just pulled it over my head. I'd never done that before. I'd never done it at home. I'd never done it anywhere. I pulled it over my head and over my nose, and I started breathing in and out from the nose, and I didn't realize, the fingers were going up and down, and I heard the audience laughing. And then I realized, oh, it's breathing. So I started blowing it up more and more and more, and I kept blowing it, and they were roaring. And then I popped it off my head, and everybody applauded, and my natural instinct went, whoa, this is a closer, good night, and I ran off stage. And Mark Breslin was standing in the hall, and he goes, you gotta come back and do that tomorrow. And I go, do what? And he goes, do what you did. I go, tell me what I did. Tell me what I did. He goes, you just be you. And that was the beginning, and again, that's another recapture like we talked about in, Candid Camera. It felt so good. I didn't know what it was, but that adrenaline, being in the moment, having that thrill, it's like being on a roller coaster, and having, I think it's 150 people fit in that room, and it was packed because it was the age of the boom of stand-up comedy. 150 people that I didn't know. It was so loud, so joyous, and now that feeling that I had with my mom and dad and in front of the Candid Camera was all coming at me, for me. And it's the first time I felt collective engagement. You know, a wonderful, bright, glorious, you know, kind of joyous engagement. And I chased that all the time.
You were concerned, I think, about not being able to replicate that feeling again, but you end up, I guess the rest is kind of history. At some point you end up
that's why, you know, I am worried about not replicating that, and that's why I don't mind. And now what I love, and I go for that adrenaline, is going up, trying something I never tried before. You know, now I have to get past to when somebody goes, ladies and gentlemen, Howie Mandel, there's a chance that there's a few people there who have some expectation, that know me, that recognize me, so they're going to applaud and enjoy. And for a couple of minutes, they'll give me, you know, easy laughs or whatever. But I like when I'm trying something and it's not going anywhere. That's where that adrenaline starts again. I go, oh my God, it could be embarrassing. This is.
You still feel that?
Yeah, I crave it. And I go, oh, this is bad. And then if I can pull myself out of that and win that, there's that joy again. And an example I give in my book, I didn't do it purposely, but the joy is, and every comic will tell you this, you know, you can have a room of 5,000 people roaring in laughter and loving. And if you see one person sitting there with a look of disdain, not enjoying it, it becomes all about that one person. All that noise goes away, and it's all like, what the hell is wrong with you? Like, why don't you like me? So I remember specifically I was at Radio City Music Hall, and in the front row, there was a guy not even looking in my direction. And I didn't think he was laughing, you know, just kind of like rocking a little bit and looking in another direction. I thought, like, he just looks like a guy that says, the person next to me brought me here and I cannot wait to get away from this, whatever this is. So much so that, again, in the moment, I was doing great. I was killing. I was doing great. And you know, on paper, you shouldn't do this. You should keep the rhythm going, but it's just who I am. I went, what's with the guy in the blue sweater? I don't know if that's what it was, but there's a guy in the blue sweater up here who won't even look at me, and he doesn't seem to be laughing. But at least if you're not gonna laugh, you came to a show, look at me. And the person sitting next to him mouths to me, he's blind. And as I do, just out of habit, anything that is said to me or mouthed to me, just so that I can take in and process, I repeat loud, so the whole audience, just because you're in the second balcony and I'm talking to somebody in the front row or is doing something, you're gonna know. And she went, he's blind. And I went, he's blind. And then in unison, it hit me and 6,000 or 5,000 people in the audience. They went, ooh. And I went, oh, I just made fun of somebody who has special needs, and he's blind, and it's probably not good. It's probably not good in the realm of, but I do have a question. I do have a question. And she said, what's your question? And I said, why on earth would you buy a ticket to a front row for a blind person? What a waste of money. This blind person could be sitting in the second balcony for half the price, and the show would be exactly the same. And that got a laugh, you know, but it was like, why would you buy? It is more to sit up front. Why are you paying more for this person, for a blind person? And that got a laugh. And that one, out of that, no pun intended, dark moment, you know, authentically found a way kind of out of that, and that feels better than the constant wave of laughter.
So you moved from Canada to LA at some point. For a period of time, your life revolved around the Comedy Store. But why was a professional low point for you the 3 weeks you opened for Diana Ross?
Oh my gosh. So here I am at Caesar's Palace. You know, I don't have much of a, I'm not seasoned, you know, as far as I haven't spent much time on stage. I don't have a lot of experience. I've never been to Vegas. Here I'm at Caesar's Palace. And the voice of God, as they call it, the announcer would go, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Caesar's Palace for an evening of Diana Ross. And it was deafening. The roar, the excitement, the anticipation was deafening. If you listened really closely in the midst of that roar. But first, the very funny Howie Mandel, which nobody heard. And I would come out in front of the curtain. You know, she had like a 30-piece orchestra and everything. So the stage was set, the lighting's a smoke machine, and there was a curtain that closed in front of that. And then there was like 3 feet of lip left in front of the stage, and I'd come out. Nobody knew me. I hadn't popped yet. I'd only done the Merv Griffin show and the Mike Douglas show. That's where, and Make Me Laugh. And then I got a call from Gene Simmons. Kiss was at its peak. I don't know how he got my number, and said, I saw you on Merv, you're a very funny man. Would you like to be an opening act for my girlfriend? I went, yes. I said, who's your girlfriend? And it was Diana Ross. That's how I got that job. I remember, like, even on the first night, because we were playing a casino, they told me I had to do like 20 minutes or 30 minutes. I can't remember exactly what the time was, but say it was 20 minutes. And the guy said, do you understand what I'm saying? And I said, yes. You said to do 20 minutes. And he said, no, I want you to understand. I go, what am I supposed to understand? And he goes, not 21, not 19, 20. And what I learned at that time, you know, the key is no matter how big the star, no matter who was there, The show was perfectly timed. They hired and paid Diana that huge money because they wanted all those people in the building to go out and play in the casino. That's where they made their money. They didn't make money promoting shows. They made money, having people play games. So if I was doing great and went on for another 10 minutes, that's 10 minutes that those people are not in the casino. So I couldn't go a minute longer. Her show was perfectly timed. So that was that. And I remember I told somebody to tap behind the curtain when there was 3 minutes left, because I knew it took me 3 minutes to take my glove out. My closer was always the glove. But I would go out to silence everything I said, silent. I remember a lady in the front row would be hitting my and get off. Or they'd start chanting, "We want Diana. We want Diana," like in the middle of my act. And it's so embarrassing. I'm standing there with a glove on my head and it's silent. I remember one time, so I hear the tap and it couldn't come fast enough. I'm soaked. And I pop the glove off and I go, "Ladies and gentlemen, Diana Ross." And they roar at that. And I turn around and somebody's supposed to page the curtain and he's holding the curtain shut. And I'm standing there and the applause dies down and I'm trying to get out. And I go, "What's wrong?" And they go, "You have another 5 minutes." So he didn't tap. I was just hearing, and I wasn't allowed to leave early either because Miss Ross wasn't ready to come out. So it's just like, it was horrible. And I turned around, I didn't have any more and suffered again and then said, "Now, Diana Ross." But I went every night, 2 shows a night for a whole week, 14 shows, dead silence. And they had hired me for 2 weeks. And they said, "Miss Ross would like to see you in her dressing room before the show tonight, sir." And I said, "Okay." And I've never been more happy in thinking that I'm about to be fired, because this definitely, there's nobody in their right mind that could think this was going well. And she just said, "I just wanted to say hi, and I just wanted to say how funny I think you are. You are so funny, and I'd like to hold you over for another 2 weeks." I went, thank you. Oh my God. Oh my God. And she held me over. I ended up doing 3 weeks of 2 shows a night, 42 shows with her. It's crazy. She always loved me and always supported me. I just went to her 75th birthday party. But one night, I think Sony Japan rented out the room, to see Diana Ross. She's an international star. Not a soul spoke English in the room, and I still went on. That was probably my best night. People were giggling. They didn't know what I was saying. They didn't know that I did better. I wanted to leave the business after that. I thought that was the end.
I know you once got paid $150 for headlining, 9 straight shows, but one moment that I think you felt you were most grossly underpaid was when you got $25,000 to perform at a bachelor party.
I got more than that.
Oh, did you?
Yes. I had already started doing St. Elsewhere, and I had already been playing to 10,000 people. So I get a call from the Comedy Store, and they said, would you do a live show at somebody's house, a house party? And I went, "No, I think I'm past house parties at this point." And they hung up, and then they called back, and they go, "There's got to be a price that you'll do a house party for." And I said, "Well, there's a price for everything." And I threw out a crazy number, more than what you said, which I think what you said is crazy, to come to a house party. But I threw out a lot more than that. And then they call me back and they go, "Okay." And then I thought, "No, this is a joke." I go, "Well, okay, it's got to be cash. Before I have to have the cash before I even show up at this party." They said, "Okay." They call me a couple hours later to go to the Comedy Store, and I go pick up bags of cash. And I go, "Oh my God." And Saturday night at the top of a canyon in Hollywood, they tell me the directions to get there. And then I get scared. I think, are they trying to kidnap me? Maybe I'm on TV. Maybe, I don't know what they're gonna do. I mean, I say to my wife, "Would you like to come?" Because it's a surprise party. And she goes, nah, I'll stay home, but call me. She didn't want to come. I didn't know it was a bachelor party. So anyway, I get in the car and I drive up. It's a dark canyon. I know I'm really close to the address. There's a scantily clad woman flags me down. I stop. She goes, are you Howie Mandel? I said, yeah. She goes, this is the party. I'll take your car. Just go in through these hedges because you're a surprise. And there's a little pool house right here. You'll hear the party. Just hide in there until you hear, ladies and gentlemen, Howie Mandel. I go, okay. And at that time still, I had a lot of props. I was the carrot top of that time. So I had like my gloves and my handbag, and I'm putting on this weird nose and things like that. And I'm standing there. The door opens, I'm in the bathroom, and some guy walks in totally drunk out of his mind and doesn't say anything to me. It's just a room, like there's a toilet and just the sink. And I'm by the sink, and I'm putting things on in the mirror. He doesn't say anything, and he just stands there, and he's using the toilet, and I'm just standing there. And it's just uncomfortable. And then he leaves, and then I hear somebody go, ladies and gentlemen, Howie Mandel. And I walk out with my handbag and my goofy, and I go, okay. And I look, it's 15 naked guys. I don't know, maybe 8 naked women doing things that you usually, had to rent a tape to see or in a hotel room. And anyway, it was like happening right there. I didn't know, did I walk through the wrong door? Like, is there a party no, this was the party. And there's a guy right mid being entertained, going, do the Bobby voice. He can't even talk. Do the Bobby voice. I'm standing there, and I do like a half hour with all this going on, and go, good night, and I leave. 2-3 weeks later, I'm in a mall, and a woman comes up to me and says, you're Howie Mandel from St. Elsewhere, right? And I go, yeah. She goes, oh, I'm such a big fan. And my husband told me they had you perform at his friend's bachelor party. And I look way in the back, about 40 feet, and he's going, and I realized they paid a fortune so men wouldn't be lying to their significant others about, so what would happen at the bachelor party? Oh, we had Howie Mandel do an act. And that's what I was. So I'm a cover. I was a cover.
It was the CEO of a big corporation.
I
right?
don't want to say. Yes, that still exists.
You mentioned, your wife not going to the party. We obviously talked to both of you yesterday, and I kind of asked a variation of this then, but like you've said, she's the key to your success.
Absolutely.
Why?
Because I feel, constantly surrounded by, and I don't mean this in a bad way, but turmoil. It's tumultuous, whatever it is, bad decision. They want you over here, they want you've spent the day with me. It's a busy, when I need anything and when I am distressed, when I'm confused, when I don't know where to turn, when I'm nervous, just turning to her, she will give me the words and the strength and the path to go. And always has. More in personal life, but equally in professionally. The first time my philosophy is say yes to everything because everything's an opportunity. And even if it's not an opportunity to be successful, it's an opportunity to learn something, even if it doesn't work out. The first thing that I opposed, no, the biggest standout in career-wise that I said, no, this is stupid, this will not work, she made me do. It's also the biggest success of my career. There's no bigger success in my career than Deal or No Deal. Up until Deal or No Deal, I had a very segmented career. The people who knew St. Elsewhere and when it was huge, didn't know Bobby's World. The people who watched Saturday morning cartoons and knew Bobby's World didn't know that I was a stand-up comic. You know, the people who watched HBO and cable at the time and watched those specials and loved that weren't the moms and the 5-year-olds that were watching TV. The people who watched St. Elsewhere were watching serious drama, you know, stories at night, weren't the people that were watching necessarily watching Saturday morning cartoons or stand-up comedy. My inbox was always flooded, this is before the internet, with, I don't think a day went by when somebody didn't ask. I have a bet with my wife or with my husband that Fiscus, which was the name of the character on St. Elsewhere, is not the same guy that blows the glove up on the head. Or Howie Mandel is not the guy that does the voice for Bobby's World. They were really, when I did Deal or No Deal, and it was the first time I was just myself, I wasn't being funny, I wasn't reciting lines, I was just showing up and hopefully, you know, steering people to a better life. Was the first time that all those audiences, they were all the same. There was family viewing, you know, people were watching with their kids, the people that watched, the mothers that watched Saturday morning, people who watched St. Elsewhere were watching Deal. Nobody didn't watch Deal or No Deal. You know, everybody knew who it was. Right. So much so that it has even become a vernacular now. You know, when you watch anything, when you read anything in the paper right now and there's some negotiating going on internationally, they go, deal or no deal, or we need Howie Mandel for this. There isn't a month that goes by where I don't see it quoted somewhere.
And she is partially responsible for
totally
that.
Responsible. Yeah. If she didn't make me do it, make me do it. Because she said do it, and I said, no, I don't think it's a good idea. She would not hear of me not doing it.
So, you know, talking to both of you guys yesterday, you've been married 46 years. I think at one point you were concerned if the, you know, marriage would last. But I mean, I said this to you yesterday, you look like kind of giddy school kids. Why do you think the relationship has lasted?
Because I don't analyze it. I don't analyze anything. Why do I think it's lasted? She is the strongest, most level-headed person I have ever met. She's my best friend. Any relationship is tough. It's always tough. With a relationship with your own children, work relationships, marriage, employment, it's tough, and there's ebbs and flows. But we are both incredibly committed to whatever we take on in life, you know? And then ultimately under that, and which is mine and her panacea to life, is the ability to laugh, you know? And, you know, life's not always easy. And in my darkest moments, we have had the most guttural, deepest, hardest laughs. And not everybody's into that. I think that more people live for how they think they should live, how they think they're going to be perceived, how they were told to live, as opposed to, we share this innate ability to kind of live authentically. I don't know what the word is, but you know, and I think that shows itself by laughing when most people wouldn't laugh.
Well, so I was talking to Terry, and she said the kind of hardest thing that you guys have been through as a family is your grandson's leukemia. And I'm curious if you had any reflections on the conversation I had with you and Jacqueline yesterday.
You're going to air it, and you'll air it. I felt guilty last night because you asked very professionally and honorably and nicely, because it is part of my life, if you can ask us about it. We have not talked about it. And I felt guilty as a parent. The reason she's on this show is because of me. You know, you're doing a piece on me. And I felt guilty for being part of the equation that put her in the spot where you're asking her questions that are upsetting. And as a child, as a parent, you don't want to see your child upset. So I felt guilty at the end of the day that I told you when we were talking, you just want every moment for your child to be happy, comfortable, and wonderful. And I said, Graham is doing a piece on me. He wants to talk to you. He asked if you could talk about your son. And I'm asking you. And she went, okay, but why is she in this position? And, there was a moment yesterday when you were talking to her that wasn't fun for her. And why is that? Because I'm doing this. You shouldn't have to feel. I actually feel that there is some upside to people knowing, just because of how it's worked out for me, in
Correct.
people knowing that I suffer and have mental health issues, people continuously come my way and say thank you for being open about it. And many people are suffering with a family member or an ill child, and maybe, and I know it is good for people to hear that they're not alone, and other people are going through the same thing. So it's important for people to hear it. But then there's also a side, and it is the main side. I'm a father. Before I'm a comedian, before I'm, a host, before I'm anything, the first thing I am, even at this point, even before I'm a husband, I'm a father. You're always a father. You don't always, the bond, I feel it in my heart, of being a husband, you can decide not to be a husband anymore. You could leave your wife. You can never not be a parent. You're always a father, and that is my blood. That is my soul. That is my reason. So, I don't want, when she hurts, I hurt.
What stands out to you most from that Hawaii trip?
It's paralyzed, it's just paralyzing, but you have to function. You have to make decisions. It's paralyzing. It was the most unexpected, paralyzing moment I would imagine in anybody's life. That us, I was in the room, it was just me and Jackie. We went to we took him to the hospital thinking he had the flu, and then we've been on this dark roller coaster ever since, for years now.
What were the key steps in getting through that?
Well, you have to make decisions. You are called to make decisions that are, you don't know if you're making the right decision. Most people,
like what?
we were in Maui, and then they had to air vacuum really quickly to Oahu, and the people in Oahu who are tremendous and wonderful had a plan of action. And the plan of action did not include flying home, because he was not in good shape, not good enough to fly. But then we wanted to come home. Their plan of action was for us to stay there for 6 months and begin. In fact, it was so drastic that he had to, within 24 hours, he had his first shot of chemotherapy. I mean, boom, bang, they wanted to attack it right away. And his levels weren't great for flying, so we thought we couldn't come home. And then we called some people here, and they had a different plan of action. Now you have conflicting plans of action. And it's up to you to make the decision. That's a really harrowing on so many levels,
How did you figure it out?
I don't know if I figured it out. I just, you know, I was so torn because we all don't know what the right answer is. And, you know, if I have an opinion, it's scary enough to think that your opinion is wrong. If I have a different opinion than my daughter, do I talk her into something and then it goes like it, then that's my fault? Should she make the? I don't know. I don't even know. I can't even revisit it. It's just, it was the most harrowing, mind-boggling, paralyzing horror show I've ever been part of.
But you know there's probably somebody watching this who's in a similar sort of situation, and from kind of your experience having been in it, like what would you share in terms of how to navigate it?
I think that you try to inform yourself as much as possible. Like I don't know all the experts, and I don't know that. I live here in LA. I know people connected to Children's Hospital here is wonderful. I called friends, you know, people like Byron Allen and Jimmy Kimmel, who have both dealt with that hospital and were incredibly open and helpful. And I know that people watching going, well, I don't have those, but it's not even about the celebrities. It was just about just talking to a different oncologist and say, if these are the facts, how would you deal with it? And then you talk to that oncologist and you go, if these are the facts, how would you deal? And when two
because
people,
for a moment you thought he might not make it.
well, that's always the lesson that I take away is you have to be your own advocate. And that is try to collect as much information as you can without unbiased information. So I have that, they said this is what they do, this is why, this is what they do, this is why. Everybody's intention is really good. Everybody is probably capable, but there's always another path. There's always another path. Know the paths and then make your decision based on the information that you have. Don't ever make a decision based on no information.
Yeah.
Or because they told me, or because they're a doctor. Do things that it'll make sense to you and have them make sense to you. I personally advocated and pushed to bring him home here, only because I don't say it's better than there. They're busier here. They do it more, you know? So I felt like the expertise, just because that's what they do, you know? On an island, they do it. It's the best place they have, and it's probably good, and he probably would have done great there. But I felt like I wanted to get him to a place where they do it 10 times more.
And there's a path to recovery and all of that. And obviously you wouldn't wish it on anybody, but Terry did tell me that the beautiful thing about it was the family coming together. You've obviously had an endless amount of good fortune in your life, and I don't mean to be, indelicate with this, but you've had a bit of a rough go recently. You know, your mom has Alzheimer's. How has that been for
That's
you
devastating.
navigating?
I'm not navigating it. It's devastating. My mother is, I lost my father in 1989. My parents were my support system. Before I even knew I had, or could articulate that I had mental health, that's where the laughter came from. That's where the support came from. That's where the love came from. That's what everything I did, and they were the biggest fans, always. And my dad would come to every show. And when he passed at 63 years old, I wanted to leave comedy, and I ended up I kept going.
Because he'd be
on the
side of
wings.
the
I
stage.
still look at the side after get a laugh to look for him, and I never missed a day up until 2 years ago of speaking to my mom. In every day of my life, I called my mom.
And she's had Alzheimer's for about 15 years?
Yeah, but it's been about the last 2 years or 3 years, she doesn't know who I am anymore. It's hard, you know. Your mother, there's this woman sitting there who has no idea who I am. Well, she can't talk anymore, but you know, it's just really hard. I call my brother every day, and he's over there, and he visits her every day, and I fly in and I see her.
You guys will often go together.
Yeah, I sit with her, you know, but I could tell she doesn't recognize who I am. It's sometimes scary for her to have this man here, you know. For years when it began, I tried to find the humor, you know, that got me through. There were some funny stories when she first, you know, I had to put her in assisted living because she wasn't taking care of herself. She loved roses, flowers. I remember her birthday, she had dementia, but we still talked every day, and that was it. And I remember she's like 93 now, but I think for her 90th birthday, it was like 4 years ago, I sent her a bouquet of flowers or a dozen roses every hour on the hour. I did it for like 10 hours, so she had 10 dozen roses. And she didn't call, nobody called. Like, she could still call me. She could press a button and it dials. I think, I'm sending her these flowers and she's not even acknowledging me. I called her at the end of the day. And when you have dementia, she's not the same as she was. She was always, I mean, she taught me, if you have nothing nice to say, don't say anything at all, you know? And she was always pleasant, even if people weren't pleasant to her. And she was a brilliant woman. She was the #1 real estate agent in Canada for a few years as far as selling condos. And she very successful, even my friends had a problem, they would go and talk to her, and this woman is now living in assisted living. And I called her at the end of the day, and I go, "Mom, how are you?" And she said, you can bleep this, but because she never talked like this, she said, "Get me out of this place." And I go, wait, why you, what's wrong? She goes, "The gardener seems to be storing all his flowers in my apartment." So these kind of moments kind of negate the pain of dealing with whatever you're dealing with.
You had said after your father passed, you didn't believe in the afterlife until that moment.
No. So he passed. I have no belief system in, you know, ghosts, life after death, the occult, mediums. You know, people don't know what to say when they encounter somebody who just lost one. So people are giving me their condolences. Somebody handed me this book. It's called "We Don't Die" by George Anderson, and said, "You read this. This will help. This will make you feel better." And I thought it was a really nice gesture. I wouldn't read it. I put it in my nightstand. About a month after my dad had passed, I couldn't fall asleep. I was up at night, and I tried to bore myself by reading a book. And I found this book in the nightstand, which I never opened. And I started reading it, and I was fascinated by his stories. He had encephalitis when he was a kid, and he went into a coma, and the doctor said if he should survive, he'll be severely either paralyzed or, and miraculously he came out of his coma. And the only thing is he heard voices. And then the kids would bully him at school because he would talk to things that weren't there. And he got diagnosed as schizophrenic. And then they went and tested him, and he was with like a Jewish doctor or something like that. I'm trying to remember the story because this is like 35 years ago.
Yeah.
But he, and then the story was that the doctor tested him, and he said, "Do you always hear these voices?" "No, only when they're here." "Is there anybody here?" "Yeah, there's somebody behind you." And she's going, "Meshigna," and the doctor turned white because this kid would have no way of knowing, this Catholic kid, but his grandmother had just passed, and she always went Meshigna, which means crazy. She always did that behind him, and then they did brain scans, and it would light up, and then certain cops would call, like he got known in the area, and he could find bodies. So I said, my entrepreneurial spirit took over. I called my lawyer, and I tied up the rights to the book and I was going to sell a series. And this is before Sixth Sense. This is before The Medium was another show. This is before all those. And I wanted the rights to George Anderson. It had nothing to do with my father. I wanted the rights to George Anderson to this book, because I thought it would be a great series. And somebody who's a victim of doing this and solving crimes. That was my idea. Mm-hmm. And we went and took him to a meeting. That day, I was having stomach aches. This is before the meeting. I went to the doctor. The doctor told me that I was eating, it might be gluten. You just don't eat bread. I went, oh, okay, I won't eat bread. I won't eat gluten. And that's it. Anyway, I went back and I had these meetings. I flew him in. He didn't know it was me. He didn't know I did it under another name because I didn't want, him not to do it because I'm a silly comedian and I was going to take this pretty seriously. Not that I believed it, but I thought it's a great story. And we go out for dinner and, I go to take a piece of bread. And he goes, your father is mad at you. And I go, why? He goes, he says you know why you shouldn't touch the bread. I go, what? He goes, your father is talking to me and saying you were told not to eat bread. Who told me that? Your father says a doctor told you not to eat bread. And I went, are you kidding? Are you, how? I believe in coincidences. I believe I'm a public person. You can maybe find things. There's no way that somebody was in my doctor's office or my doctor wouldn't know I had a meeting with this guy. It'd be ridiculous information to exchange. That was the first time I realized, are you kidding me? And now I feel him around me all the time, my father. I'm aware of it. And then when I think about things that happened up until that point, which I clocked up to coincidence, hope, weirdness, science. We're not that. It's, science says energy cannot be destroyed. It can only change forms. And there is an energy in each and every one of us. I don't know how many times you've been sitting in a room doing work and you feel like somebody's looking at me. You turn around, your wife's there. She didn't make a sound, but you knew she was there because her energy, this is electrical. We are energy. She's there. Well, where does that go when this shell fades? It's really weird. And I tell the story about, I was in the room and my father passed. And they left me with him for a little bit. And then the nurse came in after maybe 15 minutes after he had passed. Everything went flatline and they told me he had passed, and the nurse came in and they were removing all the hoses and wires and lines and everything. They're removing that. And for whatever reason, and I thought up until this George Anderson thing, I thought I've never been around somebody who died, but and it's just my imagination, but he's here. He's here. He's not dead. He's not dead. He's here. And I knew that in the core, but I believe that that's just my hope, my dream. He's here. And the nurse went, no, he's gone. He's gone, honey. You just, don't worry. I go, he's here. And for whatever reason, I screamed, Dad! And he came back into his body. And he went, like that. And I went, no, you can go. And he did the last breath. Even the nurse who had been taking out the hoses was taken aback. And even after that, I thought, okay, here's my explanation for what that was. We have scientific arguments all the time. What is death? Is it when your heart no longer beats? Is it when there's no brain function? We don't know what that, I would imagine that that after you bury somebody, their nails still grow, cells still die, and you still grow. Things still happen, biologically. So I thought, okay, so maybe in the hearing way, he's gone, but that was the last little bit. They just weren't able to monitor that. It wasn't the occult. It wasn't him floating over his body and coming back in. That was it. But then, when I heard about the bread, I went, okay. I felt him in the room, and he was trying to give me a sign. Don't worry, Howie, I'm here.
You said about your father, he was the greatest, most optimistic father anybody could have ever had.
Yeah, man. My whole family, my dad particularly, but optimism was also our fuel. Always trying new things, always investing in a new business, crazy ideas, and just having fun with life, just playing games, playing tennis, buying a new album. You got to hear that. It was just, the feeling in my house was always upbeat.
Why do you think you got your entrepreneurial spirit from him?
Because he was always trying things. See, I remember we would be in the living room packing envelopes because he started this company called Zip Grip. And Zip Grip was a clothesline where you didn't have to use clothespins. And it was basically a pulley, a two-line pulley system. And when you went like this, the lines would cross and you could put your sheet. You know, when I was growing up, the backyard was always filled with clotheslines, right? Your mother would do the laundry, and then there would be like sheets and everything hanging out to dry in the fresh air. Not the winter. In the winter was the basement. But we didn't have a dryer, so clotheslines were really big when I was a kid. And he came up with Zip Grip, and then he had invested in a company that had soft water. Then he invested in a bar in Stratford, Ontario, Canada, which is well known for the Shakespearean Festival. He decided that counter-programming would be great. So he hired a stripper, Princess Glow. And Princess Glow was a 350-pound naked dancer who would take a bath in a bubble bath and then get out of the champagne glass and walk around the room and drop her soapy giant on bald men's heads. It was always like bizarre and fun, and he liked games, he liked toys, he liked not sitting still, he loved comedy. He would hang with my friends longer than I did. You know, when I was on the road, he came on every date with me, well, you know, all the dates that I played. And I'd go to bed, you know, 1, 2 in the morning, and if we were in a casino, he'd stay up another hour with all my friends, and, you know, he was like a kid. He was a kid.
Perhaps there's connectivity between that positivity and perseverance, because you've obviously had to demonstrate that repeatedly throughout your career. The example, there's connectivity to that in Johnny Carson. The first time his chief booker, Jim McCauley, saw you do your set.
He told me,
said,
I'll never, not only am I not going to put you on the show, you will never be on the show. You are not what Johnny likes. You are the antithesis of what I would put on. You know, they wanted monologists. I was just this crazy. He said, there's no way. You can show me a different set of what you do. You're not going to be doing our show.
And you're thinking what at the time?
Devastated. You know, because that was, I told you before, that was the litmus test for making it as a comedian. You could be on every other show. You can do an HBO special, a young comedian special. You could be on St. Elsewhere. I like, and even to this day, if you wanted to title this, Today We Talk to Howie Mandel, I would say, I want you to say, if you can only say one, Today We Talk to comedian Howie Mandel. I don't want you to say we talk to host Howie Mandel. I love being a comedian. That's what I am. And I'm a comedian, a stand-up comic, who happens to have hosted shows, acted in shows, bought real estate. I'm a comedian, and that's what I am. And so to be told that at that time, what would mark you as a bona fide comedian in the eyes of the public will not give you that mark, will not give you that badge, it was devastating. When you walked around and somebody saw you and they said, what do you do? And you say, I'm a comedian, I do comedy. And they would go, well, have you been on Johnny? And if you said no, then, oh, okay, you're trying to be a comedian.
The moments that were most impactful to you personally of Joan Rivers changing everything for you?
So Joan Rivers started guest hosting on The Tonight Show and became even more popular than Johnny. On those nights when she guest hosted, the ratings were up more than just the general ratings of Johnny Carson. So I thought, okay, so I'm never going to do Johnny, but I could do the Tonight Show if, you know, one of the other hosts likes me. And how am I going to do that? So Joan lived in New York, and anybody that was hosting the Tonight Show would come into the Comedy Store to work out their monologues and their sets. And Joan would come in every time she was going to do the Tonight Show for the week or for the day or for whatever. She would come before that to the Comedy Store. So my great plan was, maybe if she sees me, I'll go on like right before her. And if she likes me, maybe I can say, hey, can I get a spot on the Tonight Show? So she was coming in one time.
Good plan.
What?
Good plan.
Good plan.
Yeah.
I'm not stupid. And I called Mitzi and I said, you know, she's coming in on Thursday night. Can you put me on right ahead of her? Is there any way you can put me on right ahead of her?
Mitzi being the legendary
Mitzi
owner
Shore,
of the show,
the owner of the club, Polly's
Shore's
mom. Yeah. And she said, yeah. As luck would have it, that Thursday rolls around and I wake up with like 104 fever. I have the flu or something. And I couldn't move. I mean, I'm cold sweats and I'm shaking and I feel nauseous and I can't move. What is the luck of the draw? And I go, hopefully by that time I'll feel better. As luck would have it, I didn't feel better. But I go, this is my one shot. I get into the car. Terry's trying to tell me not to. Now she's saying no, you know, but I get in the car and I drive and I'm shaking through Laurel Canyon in my car, and I get to Sunset, and I go, and I'm standing there and I'm feeling so sick. And then I don't know how I'm gonna do this, but they go, ladies and gentlemen, Howie Mandel. And I walk up on the stage, and as soon as I walk up on the stage, as soon as that light hits me, it's adrenaline, you know? I get excited and I just do 10 minutes and crush. I do great. I'm so happy. She walks by me because she's the next one that's coming up. And as she walks by me, she goes, you're very funny. You're very funny. I go, thank you. And I walk off and I'm gonna wait and then I'm gonna confront her after. So she goes on and she does her set. And then she finishes, and then she comes off, and she's sitting and talking to comics and Mitzi, and I'm outside in the stairwell, and you know the adrenaline of my show is worn off. I start to feel all shaky again. I can't even stand anymore. I'm dizzy. I sink down I'm just sitting against the wall and the steps like I'm gonna die, you know. And it takes forever, and I'm just sitting there, like I think I'm gonna die. And I don't know how long, it's like a half hour after she finished her set, I'm just lying on the stairs. And she comes out through that curtain and I go, hi. And she goes, you were so funny. I go, thank you. She goes, have you ever been on the Tonight Show? And I said, no, and it's my birthday this week. She goes, call Billy Samuth tomorrow and give me a number. And I called, that's her manager. I called Billy, she goes, she loved you, will you come on this week? And I said, this is it. So now I can say, when somebody says, have you been on Johnny? I'm still gonna say, yeah, but I've been on the Tonight Show. I go on the Tonight Show with her on panel, I do great. The morning after, I get a call from Jim McCauley, the guy who said, you'll never be on. And he said, Johnny watched the show last night. See, I'm sure that Johnny was watching because Joan was getting these crazy ass ratings. Mm-hmm. Goes, Johnny was watching the show last night. He loved you. Is there any way you can come on next week? I went, yeah. Now, here's the thing. Jim McCauley was very protective of his boss and the thing. So he went over step by step everything that I would say. I would do the panel. I want you to do this. I want you to do this. I want you to. And I felt like I'm not good when somebody's trying to control me. You know, or I have to think about what order I have to talk in. Like even now, people do pre-interviews. Mm-hmm. You know, I'll have Rich do the pre-interview and he'll give me but I'll go off. Yeah. And I'll talk where I want to, because I need to be, I'm not good when I'm totally scripted, unless I'm on St. Elsewhere. I can't be Howie and be totally scripted. So he gave me a bunch of things to do and I said, you know what? This is it. I'm doing Johnny. I'm gonna break the rule. So I'll do those things, but I'm gonna do one thing that's not planned. I'll do one thing that's not planned, And this thing will either solidify me or I'll never do it again. But you gotta take these big swings. You gotta go for a home run. And it's like it was yesterday, because I could feel that energy, that fear that I had the first night of Yuk Yuks, that energy, that fear that I have the first night of doing anything. I was on, it was great, he introduced me, I walked through the curtain, I'm sitting there, it's Johnny Carson, there's Doc Severinsen, there's Ed McMahon sitting beside me, I'm there. And it's going well, and they're laughing at things that I'm saying, and I have a bag of stuff like I always had. And I say to him, do you like 3D movies? And I see Jim off to the side going, what's this? I didn't plan this. He goes, yeah. So I had these 3D glasses, and I give him 3D glasses. And I reach into my bag, and I pull out like a little stuffed animal, and my heart is just dropped into my stomach. And in real time, I just go, boom, and I whip it. I'm closer than I am to him, to you. I whip it right at his face. He's wearing the glasses, and I throw this thing right in Johnny Carson's face. And it seemed like an eternity. It was almost like you can hear a heartbeat. Like, is he just gonna, and then I go, doesn't it seem like it's coming right at you? And it seemed like 1, 2, 3, and he almost fell off his seat laughing. It was like crazy. And that solidified me. I ended up doing it 22 more times. And then I pulled something like that again.
And you didn't get the reaction you were hoping for. And you never went on again after that.
With him.
Did you guys ever talk after that?
No, it wasn't like that. There was never a repartee. I did it 22 times, and it wasn't like, we weren't close. We weren't, I don't think we talked during the commercials. I don't think, he was amazing at his job. You know, he was amazing at setting you up. He was amazing at reacting. He was the consummate host.
What did you think of him personally?
I personally think he's great and loved him. But I don't, and maybe my brethren comedians disagree with me, I don't think he was a great advocate for comedy, for stand-up comedy. And the reason for that is I revere comedians, all of them, anybody who does this. And I know what goes into it. And I'm the champion of it on AGT. And I always, and maybe this is just personal, resented the fact that the comedian always went on at the end of the show, like the clown in the circus. And it was a big deal to be called over or to get a thumbs up. You would have, I won't even mention names because I don't want to be disrespectful, but you would have the third tier of somebody from a sitcom, an actor who happens to be on a sitcom and it's not their sitcom, any cast member from the Bob Newhart show, you know, on, and they'd even be the second guest, and they'd sit down and regale Johnny and the audience with stories. And they, you know, and he feigned interest in it and whatever. A comedian who writes their own material and has so much at stake and needs to elicit a laugh every 30 seconds from an audience comes out, and sometimes they got a thumbs up. Sometimes they got called, they were allowed to sit down and then they'd throw the commercial. To me, that seemed almost disrespectful. I mean, that's the artist, the person who is on the sitcom is reciting somebody else's lines and pretending to be something, and that's okay. I'm not negating that, but I just never, because it was thought of such a platform. It was a platform because the shot on that show meant a lot to each and every one of us, but I felt like it wasn't really, the milieu wasn't respectful.
You ever try reaching out to him after stuff went south?
No.
What about when you were hosting the daytime talk show? I read an interview you gave then about how he would be your, like, holy grail guest.
He is.
Yeah.
I think he was great at what he did.
Yeah.
He was great at what he did, and he is the holy grail for late night hosting.
Yeah.
And I wanted to be like him. I wanted to be able to give people a platform. I I would have never, personally on my own show, I would have never had a comedian on to do their act and say goodnight. You don't come on and good night. That's like, come and deliver me a great meal, but don't eat with me, go home. I wouldn't have done that. And any comedian I had on sat down and talked. And I had and said, do your act sometimes from the couch. My act was always from the couch. You know, the stories that I made up. It's like, so I wouldn't do that. I don't have to agree and have the same system as him, but I revere him and I revere the show.
But because of how stuff ended, you did not want to reach out about having him as a guest on your show.
He wouldn't do it. I wasn't going to reach out for a definite no. He wasn't doing anything. He appeared once on Letterman. You know, he walked away and he did it incredibly gracefully. And everything he did in his career was done to the nines. And, you know, that's who he is. I'm just saying that the show was a great platform to launch from for a comedian. Was he a good advocate of comedians? Was he an advocate for comedians? I don't think he was personally.
So we were talking about Deal or No Deal and your wife's influence and you know, agreeing to do that. The period from the cancellation of your daytime syndicated talk show to Deal or No Deal was brutal for you.
Well, because I had done I did the daytime talk show for a year. Mm-hmm. When you're doing a talk show, it's a full-time job.
Right.
It really is. So I was relegated for a year and a half because I started a half a year ahead of the airing, working on it.
To not doing these 200 stand-up dates.
Not doing stand-up.
That you were selling out leading into the show.
Not appearing on television. I wasn't doing anything. I was building my show. Whether I was staffing it, whether I was going and having meetings at affiliates who were bidding to carry the show, the business behind the scenes, whether I was sitting down and meeting producers and directors, and whether I was shooting test shows and figuring out what I wanted to do. I'm sitting a year and a half aside from the show, I was out of it. And the daytime audience is a very different, it is a specific audience. The daytime talk show audience is not the nighttime show, is not the club-going show, the concert-going show. They're really not. Unless you're like a huge success. I think Oprah and Dr. Phil, you know, burst beyond that bubble. But very few daytime. So that's what I was doing.
Yeah.
You know, so out of sight, out of mind. The stand-up comedy concert world kind of dried up. I wasn't acting. I wasn't getting the offers that I was getting after St. Elsewhere. I mean, this was 13 years after St. Elsewhere.
And so what are you thinking at the time?
So when it was taken away from me, it wasn't like the phone was ringing. So I still wanted to do stand-up, so I do some dates. I get booked in clubs and, you know, selling 65 tickets, 100 tickets. I go, oh my God. The audience is gone. You know, people don't want to spend money.
When you were selling out
Big, I had been selling out like, little outdoor venues of 5,000 to 10,000. Yeah. I'd been selling out, multiple days at clubs, and now I'm trying to get 100 tickets. And I can't. And and even acting, maybe I can get on another series, and I'm reading for 5 lines and under, and I'm sitting in a folding chair in a casting office with 5 other unknowns that look like me, you know, and I'm just going, this is ravaging for your self-esteem. And I don't need it. I don't need the money. I don't even need to be more famous. I don't need people to know me. You know, enough people know me, and that's not what I'm chasing now. I want to work. I want to do this. So to be told no, I said to Terry, you know, I'll drop in, and I was dropping in 2-3 times a week to comedy clubs. I just drop in without telling them, not hired, and doing a set, and that feels good. That's my, they're 15-minute sets, so that's my 15 minutes of light during the day. And I'm find something else to do. I have investments. I don't need money. You know, I've kind of set myself up, so I don't need money. So I'm not gonna pursue, because it's just negative. I don't want to pursue it anymore. So I'm quitting show business. And that was about 2004 when I totally stopped pursuing anything. When the call for Deal or No Deal came in.
That 5-year period, though, or whatever it was, you had, talked about being depressed, among other things. When you're in those places, where does your mind go?
Not good places. Everything from my own personal health, thinking I'm dying, to self-doubt, worry, terror, OCD, all those things light up. It's just so dark and it's really by virtue of just not being busy. I mean, you've hung with me for a couple of days. My days are full. Right. I'm not good if my day's not full. So I could make, a good decision to not pursue something like I did, my career, but I had and I have investments, but those investments, it's not like a day-to-day job when you invest in a piece of real estate. Mm-hmm. Like, what is that? So, it's throwing off money because it's a rental property. So I'm just sitting at home. And when you get up each and every day with no purpose and nothing exciting happening, it's just, I didn't have babies in the house, so I didn't even have to take care of babies. I didn't have anything to do but turn inside out, like the black hole of a star was my mind.
Ever suicidal?
I think that I'd be lying if I said it never crossed my mind, but I never got to the point where, what do you call it?
Where you were going to follow
Where
through.
you have a plan.
Okay. When you get to those places, what are the tools you use to get yourself out of it?
Distraction. Give me something else to think about. Give me something else to do. Give me some place to go. Whether that's my wife saying, come on, let's go get a lawn chair. Yeah.
Because you said if everything's going your way and there's nothing wrong, but you're sad, that's almost harder.
Because we're taught, what's supposed to make you happy? What are we taught? What is our society? When you come into this life and you become aware, what's supposed to make you happy? Having money, nice clothes, having a nice car,
good family,
having a career, having first and foremost, your family, health. If you have all that, all that exists, and you're in a dark place, that's more painful. Then you go, I'm drowning, I don't know. So then there's nothing that can get me out of this, because everything that's supposed to battle this, every reason to not be depressed exists, and I'm hanging on, and I'm still drowning in this darkness. That's helpless. That makes you feel helpless.
You've talked about when you were growing up and the bugs under the skin. Your perspective as to the impact that had was what?
I'm not a psychologist, but I do remember vividly the feeling I had when they discovered that, I'd been bitten by a sandfly and it laid its larva in me. And when I had these itchy little bumps, and you scratch them, and then you watch that itchy little bump crawl away under your arm to another place. I mean, it's like a horror film. You are the horror film. And the horror film didn't stop, so my mom took me to a doctor, and that doctor decided to put me on display. There was a dermatology convention in Toronto, because we didn't know what the answer was, and they hadn't seen this in humans. I think cattle get it. So they put me on a table. I remember I was in a I think it was a lecture hall. There was all these doctors from all over the world. It seemed like an amphitheater of like 100 people. And they put me on a table in my tighty whities on a table. I was a little boy. And the nurses would hold me down, and then they would show them these bumps, and then the bump would move, and then he would take liquid nitrogen and put it on the bump. And liquid nitrogen is so cold it burns, and I'd watch my skin sizzle and bubble, and then it would open up and obviously kill the larva, and I was screaming. They did one. And then my mom, who didn't know what they were gonna do, took me, unstrapped me from the table, and said, you're animals, don't do this, and carried me out. And I went home. And then every night, we would pick one, and then she would take a rough washcloth and alcohol and just rub it and rub it and rub it. First it felt good, but keep rubbing it until the skin broke and it would bleed and it would open until she got them all. So that was when I think I was about 6 or 7, I don't know, I can't remember exactly how old I was. But that, even talking about it holds, so.
Talking about it holds what?
It's hard to, it's traumatizing.
Even today?
Sure. I had things living under my skin. So, so I have like an ick factor.
And your mom too was
yeah, they were
afraid
all,
of germs, right?
and her mom. I remember her mom, I'd go to my grandmother's house and my grandmother would be outside waxing and polishing the porch, the concrete porch. I remember my crib. Somebody would come over and touch the crib, and when I was a baby, I couldn't even speak, but I remember that when they'd leave, my mom would like Windex it or whatever she sprayed on it and wipe it. So, all these things, not that this is her fault, I have OCD. I do have OCD, and that's not because of anything she did, but maybe that, informed the thought process, my germaphobia. But if it wasn't germaphobia, it would be the need to be afraid of the number 6. I got to do things in 6s or whatever. It would be something else. So it's not. That's not it. Go ahead.
What would happen with the warts on your hands from?
Well, I was before everybody knew about all these antibacterial things. I had. This was during the talk show. I knew that on this talk show, no matter who came in, I had to shake their hand. So my friend is a surgeon, and he gave me, I had a tub of that, whatever the surgical scrub is. He gave me that. I had that under my desk. So I would, all day long, I would just have that surgical scrub. What I noticed is I started getting warts on my hands, and I later learned that I had disinfected my hands so much that I had actually killed the good bacteria. So if I even touched a door or I touched anything, that bacteria, there was nothing to fight the bad. We have bad bacteria on us all the time. That's just part of being a living organism. So I lost that, and that's how I got it. But wart is like a virus, So I'm not negating the use of antibacterial, but in moderation, not even moderation, use it normally. I just soaked in it.
You still have a particular scenario you go through when you get to a hotel room?
Yeah, in a hotel room, I'd have the comforter off the bed. I won't touch it or touch anything it touches. If there's carpet, I put down towels and make a path. I stopped using a black light. I used to use the black. I know. I was using a black light, but it just makes me crazy. If you use a black light in a room, it's like a crime scene. It's like there's so many things light up. I have no idea what it is, and I don't want to know what it is, and so I stopped carrying it. I don't have a black light with me.
And you're okay with kissing and hugging, right? But
certain people.
Yeah.
Not everyone.
Right.
Yes. Yeah. I have children.
What about the Aviator movie scared you?
Didn't scare me. I use it as an example. That's, Howard Hughes was probably one of the most productive, brilliant, everything from aviation to filmmaking to creating the bra. Here's a guy that could do it all. And OCD overtook him to the point where at the end of his life, he's in the fetal position, lying naked, locked in a room, peeing into a cup. And I've said to people, if you don't understand, how close I am to that, and that's what I fight every day. It's not.
Do you really feel that way though?
Yeah. Yes. I could go down that little rabbit hole or wormhole and make myself not want to touch anything, anybody, and I get the comfort in retreating from the world.
And what prevents you from doing that?
Terry, medication, and therapy.
And in what ways have you found the medication and therapy helpful?
I wouldn't be on medication if it wasn't for Terry. I wouldn't have been diagnosed if it wasn't for Terry.
And you resisted medication for a long time?
I did, because I was afraid that it would, I have a certain amount of success because of who I am, and medication alters who you are. It can alter who you are. I'll be honest with you, and my family makes fun of me, I'm kind of, which is easier for me to live. I'm numb.
And that means what? Because I've heard you say that a bunch before.
I don't have that much emotion. I don't have fear, which is nice.
But hey, Rich told me 32 years he's never seen you cry.
No, I don't have fear. I don't have emotion. I'm numb. I look for those. That's why I look for thrills, to feel alive. I love roller coasters. I want adrenaline. I want to feel scared. I want to feel something. I don't have that. I don't have that anymore. But that's okay. That's like, if you wear a life jacket on a boat, if you're out on a sunny day and you're in a boat and you wear a life jacket, you're safe. Are you comfortable? You feel like kind of like this is my mental life jacket. So my mental life jacket, I don't have the same, if you weren't wearing a shirt and you were in a boat, it's a lot more, you feel the sun burning your shoulder, you feel the spray of the water on your skin, you feel the wind, right? But you put on a life jacket and you're kind of, so if you take the medication that I'm on, or at least the way it's affecting me, I don't feel anymore. But what's been good is it hasn't curbed my desires. I have enjoyment. I enjoy, or satisfaction in creating something, in producing something, in making something happen, in discovering something that I've never seen before.
Are you happy?
That's a good question. I think for the most part, I'm content. Happy is a hard place for me to get to. And I think it's a hard place for anybody to get to, depending on what your definition of happy. I have moments where I'm really happy, but those are flashes. Something happens, you go, wow, and then, like winning a lottery. If you win a lottery and you find out you're the winner, they're probably happy for a moment. And then deal with how your life has changed and how the people around you change. I don't know if you're not happy all the time. So I got moments of happiness. I spend a good amount of time in contentment, and I fight off darkness, always. It's a fight.
How's the health today?
Physically? Mm-hmm. I think I'm better than I've been in the last few years. COVID knocked me for a loop mentally, which kind of showed itself physically too.
Well, then the booze and the drugs.
Booze and drugs and eating.
Yeah.
I gained about 20 pounds, which doesn't feel good. I ate really unhealthily, which doesn't feel good. And when you're 15 years old and the only thing you've eaten is, a bunch of Pepsi and a chocolate bar for the day, you're feeling okay, right? It doesn't affect you. When you're my age and you're just having sodas and chocolate, it doesn't feel the same, but you want sodas and chocolate because you're not feeling okay. So right now I'm really healthy. I've taken up swimming.
You used to feel like a new man. I mean,
I do.
20 pounds.
I feel I've lost 20 pounds. I feel, and more than the weight, I feel like I'm not living on energy drinks, and I'm not eating sweets, and I'm not only for weight, but your whole metabolism is different when you're older, and it hurts. Just like you can drink when you're young and go to a party and wake up the next day and have at it, you know? When you're older and you drink heavy, it hurts more in the morning. It just hurts. And all that hurt all the time.
I know we've touched on briefly over the past couple of days some of your non-showbiz related work, but how about the best investment you made not connected to show business?
Well, I would have to say this building that we're sitting in. I made a little fort for myself, this little man cave, you know, that happens to, you know, be inhabited by other people who are creative and tech companies and other creations which cohabitate together, and happens to be a good investment from a real estate point of view, and a really good investment from a creative point of view, and a really good investment from my career point of view.
Did I have it right that you pretty much 4x'd the investment in this over the past decade that you've owned it?
I would think so. I'd have to really, I haven't sat down because I have no inkling in trying to sell it or flip it or do anything, but it's a lot more than I paid for it. But I bought a crappy little warehouse with no, this was a printing company. This whole thing was a printing company, and it was a mess, you know, and I've added value to it just physically, you know, physically added value. These walls that you see, all this soundproofing that you see, the ability to put totally, vastly different areas in the same building that can complement each other, but also live. This was all like one thing, you know, and now it's this cordoned off kind of.
How much real estate do you own?
Enough to survive. Not enough so that I don't have to work anymore.
Residential, commercial?
Residential and commercial rental properties. I always saw it as, I'll give you an example. When in the early 80s, okay, when Vegas was the biggest growing city in the world, you know, Steve Wynn kind of created that. And what was happening when he was building these big hotels, the trades had to come there to, you know, the electricians, the plumbers, the landscapers, the people who built, so they all came there. So the first thing we did, we go, because I was in the carpet business, me and my partner said, well, how do these people move there and then do their business? So we bought a lot of dirt around the airport, and we built these little, we called them commercial condos, but they're just little warehouse with a warehouse door and an office in front. So a plumber could have an office, he can get his shipment of whatever his things are in, and traditionally they rented those out. They were already happening, but there was people renting commercial space, just like you see in this area where we are now. You know, we're a plumber or an electrician or a tile guy or whatever. So I said, well, why don't we sell them as condos? So we bought them bought the area for nothing. It's not where anybody wants to live. These are just tilt-ups, little concrete squares. I couldn't build fast enough to sell them out. Because all these trades and all this building was going on, and because of the tax benefits of Nevada, people started moving there. So then there's these companies like KB Homes, and there's these big development companies in America that bought dirt way out and subdivided to build 2,000 homes on a plot, like Summerlin and Henderson. None of these places were developed, and this is where people who now work on the Strip, this is where they all live. And so they were building 2,000, and because it was so good, people were bidding on these houses. They were selling these houses like huge in the 80s and 90s. So I saw that and I said, well, I see where this is, and this is like 20 miles from the Strip and 20 miles, and the reason they were able to build like they did, it's so cheap, they're buying this. So I would buy like 2 acres of dirt I'd go see where the land was subdivided before the houses were built. And I'd buy 2 acres of dirt that would lead into whatever the main artery into this new subdivision was. So I'd buy 2 acres of dirt, and people would say, for what? And I'd go, these are 2,000 families. Where are they gonna get gas? Where are they gonna buy their groceries? So I'd put on my 2 acres, a little strip mall of a gas station, a little AM/PM store, a little store, a car wash, and this became. I knew that I was going to be serviced by 2,000 homes, so that I got to a point where I had like a bunch of gas stations. I ended up getting bought out, but it was, and my partner went into another business.
How many do you have?
Strip malls, I had about 8, and gas stations. The gas stations became the big business, and not for what you think.
What do you mean?
So in Nevada, gas was the least money you made. People go in and buy sundries at a gas station, but even more importantly than that, you rent out, in every gas station they had like a poker machine, an electronic poker machine. They would come in, these poker machine companies, they'd say, we'll put a poker machine in your gas station and we'll pay you like $30,000 a month rent. I go, wait, if you're paying me $30,000 a month, how much are you making? So on all the gas stations, and then not as much, but the post office come in, so you have a stamp machine there. Like when you go into these places and you see, stores are real estate. That's the way people do business now. That's Ulta and Sephora's whole business now is, I always thought, like, I'm looking at this giant Sephora, and I'm always thinking, and I'm interested in this kind of stuff. This kind of stuff lights me up. I'm interested, I say to, I look at Sephora, I'm talking about the cosmetic. Sure. So I go like, even if somebody comes in and buys eyeliner and lipstick and lip gloss, how are they paying the rent on this? Because I've owned retail and I know what it is. How are they paying the rent on this? The Sephora's making money because they're taking a piece of that sale, but more importantly, they're charging L'Oreal or lip kits by Jenner's rent on that's real estate. So they're charging rent for that. If you want to be an end cap or you want to be on that shelf, they're paying rent for that, right? And that's why when I get into the hologram business, I say, well, you know what? If you're paying rent to have your product here or you're paying for the signage, let me put my hologram machine in there. And now anybody who walks by has access not only to you, but to everything you sell and more than you can ever put on a shelf. And that's just as exciting as doing a show, producing TV, doing stand-up comedy, just finding a new way to do business.
You once said, what was important to me in my 30s is not important to me now. And you realize that things you chase don't matter, and it's just the ability to get up and even chase something.
It's the chase. If you want to get up and do something, if you want to get up and talk Walmart into saying this is the new way to display everything you have in the store, and get Walmart to say yes, and we're going to buy 2,000 of these machines, that's kind of exciting, isn't it? I did 22 Tonight shows. But does that really matter? Does anybody even know? Does anybody remember anything I did on The Tonight Show? No. But if this becomes the way of people doing business, the way a doctor can reach somebody who can't get to a doctor, the way somebody can see a 3D image because they can't, the way Christie's is now doing business. Or at the same time, somebody can walk in here to do my podcast, but they can start playing League of Legends, and somebody like T-Pain wants to join, and they create a world league. I don't play games online, but I'm fascinated by the amount of people that engages, and I want to be part of that. It has nothing to do with me, but I've given them a roof.
Okay, and lastly, what motivates you today?
I want to be a blank slate, and I want to wake up and find a motivation. And every day, sometimes 3 times a day, there's 3 different motivations. Whatever I'm motivated by right now is not what I will be motivated by tomorrow. Like I don't know if it was clear in watching me work, but just I'm motivated by watching a bunch of things happening. I love walking around and watching, in the other room. There's 3 other shows going on that I have nothing to do with, and nobody who sees those shows will ever know that I have any connection in any way. But there's something motivating about the energy of creativity and weirdness and fun and tech and information that is going on around, because I said, how much is this building? And that's a motivation to just keep doing it, or showing up here and doing that. When I finish talking to you right now, I'm getting on a plane and going to New York, and I'm gonna be touring with my buddy Brad Garrett. That's kind of motivating. We're gonna have fun. I love the guy, I love hanging with the guy, and we're gonna have fun, and we kind of don't have a plan. No plan. He called me the other day, says, so what are we gonna do? Who's gonna go on first? Are we gonna do stage time together? I go, I don't know, let's see how we feel. And that's what, it's that easy. And tomorrow I'll be motivated to, to go to Jackie's house and sit there and play for 3 hours with my grandson. And, I'm always motivated to do that. But I'm just saying, I like that motivation, and I don't wanna be held to a plan. Life's too short. The only thing I have is moments. Moments are my currency. Moments are everybody's currency. And just enjoy it, know the value in it, or hate it and know the value in it. But I just want to be open to these moments, and I don't want to steer myself away from a moment that's coming my way, because it comes at you. You don't go at it, it comes at you. And it's what you do with what comes at you that makes a difference.
Thanks for doing this.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it.
It's over.